the markets, it was a fairly muted day on the JSE, tipping about 1/3% into the red. This after weeks of outperformance, and that's relative to its global peers. So how did today turn out? Well, let's bring in Sanlam's Nick Kunze. Nick, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. I mean, there was much thinner volumes on the JSE today. What's behind that? I'm wondering whether or not this was just not the case of, profit-taking here.
Yeah, evening, Devin. Yeah, it's always when we're not quite sure why, we always fall back on the profit-taking scenario. But no, the volume was a big concern today. I mean, close, just under 14 billion value traded. To put that in perspective, the JSE normally trades around about 20, so that's 30% under normal, and difficult quite what to say. I mean, the holiday is not till next week where we have a 4-day week, so it just appears that at these levels we hit all-time highs in the middle of last week. We had a bit of a volatile sort of session on Thursday, bit of a grind into the weekend. So it is a very important week though, Devin. There's a lot of key data offshore, inflation numbers and various things to keep an eye on. So get the impression maybe a couple of traders or market watchers are sitting on their hands today, and that's been reflected in the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, on that, release of surveys, I mean, of course, we've got inflation numbers in the world's biggest economy, that's the US. But here, tomorrow, we have these economic growth numbers, GDP numbers for the first 3 months of the year. I'm wondering how closely watched are those numbers, because they tend to fluctuate simply because we've had such an unusual year last year. Do you think the market will have their eyes on those growth numbers coming out tomorrow for the first quarter?
I think personally it's a little bit more of just a validation of where we are. GDP numbers, this is for the first quarter. I mean, we're already sort of well into the first week of June, almost halfway through the year. So it's a little bit backward looking. And unfortunately, with the year, as you pointed out, the year we've had in South Africa and around the world, I mean, we're changing, literally from one day to the next, depending on we open or we shut or where we are with vaccines. So I think it's a little bit behind. Although it's worth keeping a note of, we are sitting, as we said earlier, markets at all-time highs in South Africa just a week ago. So I think it'll be nice to maybe get a validation of how we're actually growing, even though, as I said, it's a little bit out of date for now.
We just spoke about First Rand releasing a trading update earlier. It says its profits will be about 1/3 higher. One of the reasons is that consumer spending is back to pre-COVID levels. But, of course, we're still dealing with such a tainted economic revival in that, people are taking out debt more than they did a few years ago. What's your take on the First Rand trading update?
I think they're okay. I mean, First Rand have been very good with guiding. They've been very transparent, like all the other banks. I mean, it must be taken, though, Devin, a little bit of pinch of salt. This is coming off a very, very low base. I mean, such an unusual year that you're marking your increase on. Even though there's a 35% increase in revenue jump, as they've pointed out, that does only put them roughly at 2019 earnings and revenue levels. So even though coming off such a low base, we're back to pre-COVID, we're still a year or two behind where we should be. So I think put that in perspective. Although encouraging, people are coming out a little bit, shops are opening out, people are coming out and spending their money. We're still a long way to go yet. And I'd like to see a couple more. I guess the earnings are going to be important. I also want to see what the impairment's going to be. They're a little thin on the impairment detail. That for me is going to be crucial to see if we take it to the next level. But overall, fairly encouraging that we're slowly getting back to some sense of normality with the financials.
All right, Nick Kunze from Sanlam, thanks very much indeed for giving us your insights. Well,